Welcome back to the iJupiter podcast. I'm your host, Tom Franklin. If you keep finding yourself coming back to the show and you enjoy these live podcasts that I have every Friday at 6:45 p.m. Eastern time, please do me a favor and like and subscribe to the channel. And every Tuesday, I also have an extra show that I pre-record and put it together in a different kind of way. That way you guys get to enjoy it. I've had a lot of credible guests, especially recently. I just had on Mel Strahan, and we went into some mind speak and being scanned amongst many others, Dogman, paranormal conspiracies, everything you can find here that you get to know and love from the iJupiter podcast. Hit the bell notification on all those things so you don't get to miss any of those episodes. So today's guest, this is a little different. Guys, normally I just say the name of the guest and then I kind of introduce them, but this one's a little bit different today. So this person is a very important person, a very special person. If you know anything about the Clearwater Ranch, she is the CEO of the Rocky Mountain Research. She's the co-host of On the Map Studies. She has been on multiple television shows, the History Channel, Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, and The Unexplained with William Shatner, which is crazy. And she's also an author of books, at least the one I do know of. We'll get into it a little bit later, of course. Short is called Letters of Light, 4 Decades of UFO Encounters. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome to the stage the one and only, stage, S-T-A-G-E, the one and only Katie Paige.
Thanks, Tom, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Happy Friday night, everybody. I love live
happy
shows.
Friday. I'm glad that you're here. As you see, sometimes my brain just simply doesn't work, and that's okay. I'm getting up there in years, and through time, I just I'm not bothered by it anymore. So, welcome to the show, and I'm very happy that you're here. Please do me a favor. I gave you a little bit of an intro. Could you maybe tell me, or tell everyone actually, a little bit about yourself, what it is that you do, and the things that you're promoting?
Yeah, basically how I got here. I love that we got to visit for a few minutes before the show, because just like you, I think we're very similar. It's kind of organic and hey,
a little out there, yeah.
Already so much in common. Like so many of you, I like to say it's been a paranormal life for me for many reasons, and we can kind of talk about things I've discovered through the years. But my mother dated a gentleman who bought a 60-acre ranch property out in Elbert County, Colorado. This is the ranch where Linda Moulton Howe. Have you heard of Linda Moulton Howe? She was an investigator. Okay, so she's on Ancient Alien. She's kind of a big deal in the UFO world. Did a lot of work. Actually started out there in Elbert County, the ranch of my childhood, investigating all the rash of cattle mutilations out there. And it wasn't just cow. I mean, it was horse, and people were arming themselves. This was almost occurring daily, these mutilations, these strange blacked out helicopters. Have you heard of the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah?
Of course.
Yeah. So
I've also heard of Sky Wolf Research is next to it, and many others.
Right. Blind Frog. Yeah, there's Blind Frog Ranch out there with Dwayne Ollinger and that. Mm-hmm. But so, my family and I had experiences out there. I did not live on this ranch full time, thank goodness, or I don't think I'd be doing what I was doing. But a lot of things were happening out there. We were threatened and warned not to talk about what happened out there. So like most people in life, you go through school, raised family, got married, you're living life trying to pay the bills. But all those years at the ranch, I just had these questions like, what the heck was all that? Before the hitchhiker phenomenon was a really known thing, since the book of Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, I compartmentalized a lot of my different things. So kind of started out in the ghost world. I've had a lot of paranormal things happen in my life. And I got addicted to the great show Ghost Hunters, with Jason and Grant and Steve and Tango. And they would host these events. So I did events out there at this St. Augustine Lighthouse in Florida. That was one of my favorite episodes. Do you remember early on with Ghost Hunters, they had that episode at the lighthouse where they had that shadow go across the rail, and then that shadow figure looks down. It's like one of the best episodes. So kind of started out.
But I was in Germany, so I can tell you a lot about German television if you like, because back
you have Ghost Hunters in Germany?
No, they're too serious for that. They're too busy to be something more like the Beer Hunters or something like that. But it's just that at that time and period, it wasn't like the internet like it is today. So I know of the show Ghost Hunters. So when I would go home on vacation, I might have caught an episode or two, but I kind of missed all of that.
You missed all of that.
Missed all of
I
it.
think, yeah, I think so many of us, when we start looking for answers for some of these unusual things, I started, watching all the documentaries, watching all the shows, Ancient Aliens, when it first came out. I don't know what season they're on now, but oh my goodness. And I learned about MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network. And I'm like, okay, I'll look up to see if I have a local chapter. I did. Colorado has a pretty strong chapter. Came right in as a field investigator and started investigating other people's reports. And it's a really good place to get your feet wet. That's where I started. Worked on the Mars team. So that was a project where a team of 15 of us, and I ran the project, but we spent 3 years redacting all the old paper reports. So there was over 10,000 of those reports. But while I was working, I made my way up to the state director for the state of Colorado, and I since passed the torch on to somebody else. So actually, I'm here in a hotel because I'll be the guest speaker for Colorado MUFON tomorrow. So I'm coming to you live from a hotel room. It's kind of a fun little local getaway. But anyway, so I did that, and one of the questions I always had, I never knew anybody actually knew about the ranch, or I never knew anybody investigated it or that it was reported until I bought a book called Hunt for the Skinwalker by George Knapp and Colm Kelly, her PhD. And this was before
George Knapp. I've heard of George Knapp.
Right. It's before the show Skinwalker Ranch, and I picked up this book at a Barnes and Noble. I'm just reading the back cover going, wow, this sounds a lot like what happened to me when I was younger. So I buy the book. I'm at home reading it. And there's a chapter in that book called Other Hotspots. And I start reading about a ranch in Colorado. And I'm like, holy beep, because I was reading about the ranch that we all experienced on it. And it was in that book that I learned that the location was never known. They dubbed it the Clearview Ranch, but it's in County, Colorado, right? And I learned that Dr. Leo Sprinkle, PhD. Now, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, he was a well-known psychologist out of Laramie, Wyoming, and he would hypnotize experiencers. So he was kind of a pioneer in the field of, hypnosis and things like that. He did studies of people that claimed extraterrestrial visitation and things like that, or channeling. So I got to know Dr. Leo Sprinkle well, but there were also two other PhDs, Dr. Peter Van Arsdale and Dr. John Durr, who is a seismologist. So this was the first time me and my family even knew anybody investigated the ranch property. And for the past 15 plus years now, it's been a rabbit hole of how much of it is Black access government projects. And we can get into a little bit about that and why I believe that's part of the answer of what's going on at the Rocky Mountain Ranch, and how much of it is actual paranormal stuff. So it's been a crazy journey ever since, because with these high strangeness locations like Skinwalker Ranch, you're talking about cryptids, the paranormal. I mean, I started a podcast called The Trifecta because that's what it is: UFO and orbs. And then you have government and the secrecy and MK Ultra and these other programs getting into the Project Gateway and all these. They all play a role in some of these high strangeness locations. And I've always wondered, like, what is about certain areas, especially remote areas like where you are right now, that kind of attracts some of this activity, this high strange activity.
Yeah, it's not only okay. So this is the fourth one I've heard about one of these locations that have this super ultra strange what the hell's going on. Of course, the first one is Skinwalker that I heard of. Then there's Skywolf Researcher, which is right next to it, and then I talked to Tim Hudson from the Meadow Project, and that place Trey.
Yeah, Trey
Husband.
Hey, Trey.
You think I would remember the name, but I can't because, So, and that's an undisclosed location, but we know that's in the southeast. And I've also talking to the gentleman from the area in Wisconsin. I think it's Wisconsin, southern Wisconsin, the Beast of Bray Road. That Lee, whatever his last name is.
Yeah, I know Lee.
Hamples. Yeah, Lee Hampel. And so that's like 4 locations where it's like, it's something about that specific area. But out west further, especially that Utah, that whole basin area there that you're talking about, there's something extra special about it. I'd love to hear why you think so. I've also had a person a long time ago where she's saying like sometimes people are abducted by the actual military themselves, and those are the very traumatic ones. The people have traumatic experiences are because of the military, and the ones that are, say, for example, from extraterrestrials or other, interdimensional beings, those just seem to be a little more pleasant. So what do you think? So what do you think that is over there? That this tie is coming in together, like they're maybe trying to copy their intelligence, not their intelligence, but their technology. So they're trying to emulate, or they're working in cahoots together, or what do you think's going on?
Yeah, that's always been one of my main questions, which came first, the chicken or the egg? There's no doubt. John Schuessler, who's one of the founding fathers of MUFON, learned of my connection to the ranch, and he bestowed upon me the original briefing documents from that location. And then I've been to the archives in Laramie and got everything I can find, all the reports, all the investigations from the ranch. And we do know, and even through Linda Moulton Howe's movie, A Strange Harvest, that there were military men and women on the property. We had people from Fort Carson Army Base out there. We know Air Force Academy was very much aware of what was going on out there, sheriff reports and whatnot. So I always wondered, like, how much of this, we know there's actually a great report called The Choppers and the Choppers, because there were all these blacked out helicopters out there during these animal mutilations. And so sometimes they were seen in, connection with the mutilated animals, and sometimes they were not. UFO craft and such like that. But so I always wondered, like, what you asked, Tom, were they out there trying to figure out what was going on, or are they causing it? And in my looking into the history of the ranch itself, which sat vacant for over 10 years, the Rocky Mountain Ranch sat vacant. The people that owned it before, it was a Mulligan homestead, or the Mulligan Ranch. And Dick Mulligan was born and raised on this property. And if you do a Google search on Dick Mulligan, he in his later years became the caretaker for Winter Park Ski Resort up here in Colorado. And he was an Irishman, and he was known for having bold exaggeration and the gift of gab. So I'm thinking here's this man who was born and raised on this strange, high-strangeness location, and he's known for having bold exaggeration and storytelling. Well, I think we can kind of read between the lines and go, this is, and talking to neighbors and people in that area, which is very similar to Dulce Base and the Archuleta Mesa out there, the Utah Basin. Out here, it's called the Palmer Divide. So these locations, and there's another high strangeness location too in Ohio, Pyle, Pennsylvania, Marley Woods out there in Missouri. I just had Tom Ferrario on my podcast talking about Marley Woods, and of course Sedona, which is highly energetic. We have the Bradshaw Ranch out there. So these ranches all seem to ping the charts as being highly magnetic. So if you go to like the magnetism charts of the United States or around the world, you can see the light pink is highly, highly magnetic. 90% plus of these locations are extremely highly magnetic. Most of them have water features, whether they're rivers, streams, or aquifers underground. I know David Pilates talks about the aquifers in his Missing 401 UFO connection. And even like ghost encounters, like the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, you have certain geological, limestone and granite and water that all run under these locations. So I think it's kind of this magic stew pot of these elements, certain geologic, and in the San Luis Valley, and we'll get to Snippy the Horse here, the latest book. But we have the Great Sand Dunes, which is all crystal and sand. So,
it's all the quartz and things that conduct electricity and things of that nature.
Absolutely. And then the question becomes, whatever this is it attracted to these locations, or does this kind of make the veil thin for us to interact with the phenomena? And it could be a combination of both.
Of course. So go ahead and we have some time today. Could you maybe take me back to the beginning? Maybe a few. We'll go ahead and get to your books in a minute. And of course. And by the way, guys, go over to her. If you're listening, go over to her YouTube channel. What's your name of your YouTube channel, Paige?
It's Rocky Mountain Ranch Research with Katie Paige. Yes, please, because I just lost my.
She did. She had one hell of a mulligan, and we're going to go ahead and try to pump her channel up. So go ahead. It's Rocky Mountain. One more time, Rocky Mountain not
Rocky
new?
Mountain Ranch Research with Katie Paige. If you just
Okay,
Google,
Mountain Ranch. Okay, it's got a
yeah,
lot
if
of
you
R's in there.
search that
Oh,
on YouTube, you'll be able to find it.
okay, fair enough. Awesome. We're trying to help her out to get back to her. She was, I think, about 2 weeks ago, and then I seen my wonderful moderator was like, "Oh my God, poor Katie." I was like, "Oh my God." Okay, so I wrote you immediately. You were like, "I don't care. The world's coming to an end." I was like, "Okay." And then
Yeah,
and then,
I didn't
I tried to
realize that
talk.
was you at first.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
I
Everyone was
was
probably
so
reaching out.
done. Oh
Yeah,
my
here we
God,
go.
that was so
Here it is
done.
right here. Boom. Here's the channel. So please do me a favor, Katie. Take me like back to the beginning a little bit and kind of like, your experiences out there and how strange
Right.
they actually
Yeah.
were.
I'll give you the nutshell version because I don't want to go into the whole story of my whole life. But there is a kind of an important piece that we kind of touched on before the show, and we'll get to that in a little bit, which is the trauma aspect of it. But long story short, my mom was a computer operator for United Airlines. I was born in Illinois, actually, moved out here to Colorado because they moved their training center and their computer center out here. She starts dating a gentleman that buys this ranch. Okay. And that's kind of how I knew when I got the book Hunt for the Skinner. I'm like, that's the ranch, because my mom was dating a gentleman who was supposedly getting a divorce. He never ended up getting a divorce. And she was dating another gentleman, which plays a role into what happens, I believe, because this other gentleman, so the three of them purchased this ranch. The other gentleman claims to be Air Defense Command out of San Francisco. And I believe through my research and documents, there was some MK Ultra stuff going on at this ranch. The reason
Oh
being,
my God.
yeah, in one of the briefing documents, it states that this John person from Air Defense Command was using legal LSD, and then interviewing a whistleblower who her dad was CIA and recently passed away. I interviewed his daughter and his widow, and he said that they were experimenting. The military was experimenting what they called FM, which stood for freaking magic, which was a combination of LSD and different hallucinogens.
Oh,
And it stated
candy
at the
clipping.
ranch that they were experimenting with stuff like that. And then in another document, it states that there was a gentleman by the name of Warren, his last name was redacted out, visits the ranch, felt something wrong. Something took over his mind, made him walk toward the woods. It would release him and he would run back to the ranch house. And this did this to him 5 times. There were strange boxes on the location, which I encountered. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, you've done this quite a few times. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's slowly go into the boxes. How big are these boxes? And what do they look like?
What's interesting about the boxes, because Trey Hudson, you mentioned Trey, and I've had the privilege of working with his team a couple times out there down south.
Oh, you've been there. Okay, wow.
Well, I worked with them on the team. I didn't live down there, but I flew out there.
No, but you went to the undisclosed location with the
yeah, I did. Yeah,
with the little agreement that you. Okay, yeah, of course.
Yep. Sign the agreement.
Yes, I know. Be
just
careful.
Down south. But Trey, one thing I admire about Trey's team is they're very scientific. They have a lot of equipment. They're very protocoled. I'm not making fun of you, Trey. I love Trey. He's a great friend, but he's very, Boy Scout, military.
Oh, yes.
And I love that. And I appreciate that. And they always try to debunk things too. But they caught that big, large box on FLIR camera where, his team actually disappears when they go into this box.
Yes.
Now, the boxes we saw, the boxes we saw out at the Rocky Mountain Ranch, what I encountered when I was little, it was me, my mom's boyfriend, and their youngest son. They had a pickup truck. We went to get some tools out of this building, and then we're driving around the Ponderosa Pines back behind the ranch house. And hovering off the ground was this large box. It had lights illuminated. It made this bee sound, like if you've ever stood under like electrical power lines,
yes.
that sound.
Yes, that hum.
Sounded like that. And so Jack's yelling at us, "Get in the truck. It's a box. It's a box." We jump in the back of the pickup truck. I turn around. That box was gone. Other adults in the report said that, now I don't know if this happened or didn't happen. I never saw extraterrestrials or anything like that, but they were said to be 2 types out there on the property. This, what Paul Giamatti dubbed the tubey guys, which were these very unusual extraterrestrials with these tubes and helmet and heavy brows and very strange. And then the other type was said to be the Nordic, the blonde, blue-eyed Nordic type of ET. But in one of the reports, it says that they said that these boxes are lethal. And in front of this John person who claimed to be with the military, it said it had a Sasquatch approach the box and it dropped him to his knees. That's what's in the report. I did not witness this. I have no idea. But the sheriff, the undersheriff Bill Waugh, witnessed the box while out on patrol. He saw this box where no box should be, wanted to approach it, but was too frightened. So he goes back and gets a posse sheriff. He said him and the other posse sheriff approached the box and he saw the tree and the box as if they went underground. So yeah, these strange boxes are reported. My sister also, when she was out there for season 3, she remembers seeing a box too.
Yeah, I'm just trying to piece it together because a good friend of mine, Marcus Ellis, who used to be a member of MUFON and is now a member of the North American Dogman Association Mississippi chapter, he had a strange experience in a wildlife management area of Mississippi where it was a day after rain. He drove pulled off the road to the left, and it's about maybe a minute track into a little part where he parked. He came down and he looked down the road where he just came from, and he saw a large rectangular flat black box.
That's amazing.
And he was just like, I don't know what this is. I'm freaking out. Walked back to his truck to get in it, drove out, and by the time he drove back to where he wanted to go right, or at least left to get the hell away from it, it disappeared. So he goes, I don't know if this is real, Tom. If you've run across anybody, please let me know. So that's why I wanted to bring up the box.
Yeah, I need to talk to him. Yeah, I need to talk to him.
Marcus Ellis. He's the third. You are now the third person that I've heard, that I've heard of this. And I'm just trying to bring everyone together. Basically, the show is about, okay, let's get information out. These things are real. Let's go ahead and spread it out as far as we can, because we're not going to be waiting on any type of, scientific type research for actually to bring us together under any type of flag of realism that the world accept these things. So that's why I brought it up. So yeah, so this guy gets dragged back and forth 5 times to go to his house to the wood line.
Yeah. Right. No, it's so important that you're doing that. Yeah, it's so important because, like you, there's Paul Sinclair out of the UK, and the boxes are something, to me, it was so out there and unusual. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't talk about it. I was like, nobody's ever going to believe this crap. But it happened. And then I'm talking to Paul Sinclair in the UK, and he has a box encounter. UFO National Historical Record Center, which is out at Rio Rancho, New Mexico now, who has Project Kufos and NICAP and APRO and all that. They have reports of these cubes flying around. At the congressional hearing, we hear about a cube within a sphere. So these cubes keep popping up. And in 1974, there's a famous case, the Carl Higdon case out of Medicine Bow, Wyoming. And that's an interesting case. If you don't know the case, you should look it up. But he's out elk hunting. He's an oil rigger. He's out there in Medicine Bow. He sees a beautiful bull elk, takes a shot, and the bullet hits an invisible wall and drops. The casing of the shell turns inside out. This case has a lot of photographic evidence, a lot of medical records evidence, but he too had a box. So he meets an ET that he named Osso 1. Osso floats these food pills over to Carl Higdon and asks, are you, telepathically, are you hungry? Because he's out elk hunting, so he must be hungry. He takes these pills, ends up in the hospital that night. Yeah, his wife, he's missing, has missing time. His truck ends up miles away in this mud bog. Other witnesses see unusual lights out there in Medicine Bow. It's a great case, but at Laramie Heritage Center, some of the original photographs from that case, you can see the dead grass and an impression in a box on the ground. So there was a cube there as well. And he talked about being that not only he was transported in this box that was like a tesseract, it got bigger when he went into it, but they took the elk. Right. So there's this weird elk connection that's happening too. So yeah, these boxes just keep popping up all over the place. So there's something to it.
There's something to it. It's just the strangest things. He was just like, he said the only thing he felt was just like something told him, I gotta get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And he goes out with, he's friends with like MK Davis, and I've had MK Davis on too. And they, they go out and there's, 3 mounds. He's in 3 Indian burial grounds, heard people talking and walking around. It's just like, I think also this whole, you're an experiencer and a researcher and an author and, a TV personality. But I think for the people like myself, I've had a few experiences, which we talked about behind the scenes, which everyone knows. But I think most people have had some type of paranormal encounter, but nothing like really like where it's like, okay, this is where it's bothering me on a certain level. And I want, we talked briefly about this in the back, what this does to you and how people are trying to deal with it. And I think shows like this help, people like yourself, brave people like yourself, and many, many others who come on and talk about these experiences so that people realize they're not alone. Maybe you can like expound upon that a little bit.
That's so important. And you're one of the very few people who really touches about the mental health aspect of this. And it's so important. I'm glad that you are, because it can be very isolating. For me in particular, my experiences started so young that I just thought everybody kind of had this paranormal type of existence. I mean, I'm aging myself a little bit, but during the ranch years, that was right when Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out. And I thought it was a documentary, literally, because it had, dead cows and mutilations and balls of light and all these things. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is my life. I'm watching it right now. But it's very isolating. And I can remember especially being threatened and warned not to talk about it. So my mother and her boyfriend.
Whoa. You were threatened.
We were threatened, yes. And what's really fascinating, my sister, she's 6 years older than I. So, she was, finishing her last years of high school during this time. So I'm 9, 10, 11 years old. She's older. So she has very specific memories of what she encountered out there. We experiences some things together. Yeah, so the scariest night out there, and this is why if you watch Beyond Skinwalker, when we're on the radio and I'm trying to communicate, we're trying to, kind of reenact and communicate with whatever that was that happened on that most scary night on the ranch. And what happened was, we were all there. It was the boys' mother's birthday. So my mom's dating this guy named Jack. He has 3 sons. The 2 younger sons lived with us about 45 minutes away so they can attend a larger school district. The oldest son stayed on the ranch full time. So we would drive the boys back and forth to see their mom and, help around the ranch on the weekends. And that's where we had our experiences, and we'd hear police being called and more mutilations being done and this kind of thing. This went on for 3 years. And so on that particular night, it was, all the adults are hanging out in the front room of the ranch house playing board games. Me, my sister, and the 3 boys are hanging out in the back bedroom. And this hum sound was something that would happen. Sometimes the hum would be like the Taos hum. It would be so loud you couldn't hear yourselves talk over it. Anytime that hum would happen, something unusual, whether it was a cryptid, an orb, some crazy was going to happen. So the hum starts up. We're all freaking out. The power in the house goes out. So there's no power. This bright, bright light out of the boys' bedroom is out on the ranch. We're like, what the hell is this? And at that very moment, it was like coming out of every orifice in the house. But it was this electronic sounding voice. And the reason I know what it says verbatim is because it's in the original APRA report as being reported, which we didn't know anybody reported it, but there it was. It said, attention, we have allowed you to remain. We have interfered with your lives very little. Do not cause us to take action which you will regret. Your friends will be instructed to remain silent concerning us. Whoa. And my mother took that very seriously. Now the investigator in me is like, okay, is this MK Ultra? Is this the military? Because I learned something about plasma ball technology. Plasma ball technology is where they pipe human sounding voices, which, by the way, when I researched it on YouTube, they sound very electrical sounding, just like that voice I heard, where they can pump human sounding voices out into the field of battle. So you're not putting men at risk in war. And I'm thinking, were they experimenting with plasma ball technology out there at the ranch? It's a possibility. I'm not saying all this stuff was extraterrestrial in nature. In fact, I'm more of a skeptic than a lot of people want to believe. I think a lot of what we see, we can explain away, or it's our own stuff that, we've developed. So that was the scariest night out there. And when I do that radio experiment on Beyond Skinwalker, were trying to, that's why they put the crystal radio in that very room where that happened, where we were as little kids. And we got a response, which was crazy.
Yeah, my girlfriend, she was on the show, and she told me that she experienced something like that, where she heard a humming outside of her window, and she heard where it sounded like a radio voice, just kind of like, but it was inaudible to her. It was just like something was talking to her, and she said it scared the living hell out of her. And she looked up in the sky and didn't see anything, but she felt like the air was staticky and like just jumping, and so. Like what you're saying is kind of hitting home a little more closer to me. And so they actually announced it like on a PA system to you, not like the Men in Black, where the Men in Black show up and go,
right. But what was weird is there was no power. There was no power in the house. But you bring up a good point. So we were kind of told to not talk about it. So here we are, here I am, 9, 10, 11 years old, have kids in elementary school, going into middle school, those years. And I'm trying to tell my friends, and they look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah.
They're not experimenting ghosts. They don't live in a haunted house. You get teased. So you learn very quickly to shut up and get quiet. So I was very quiet in school, didn't talk to a lot of people. And that can lead to PTSD type things, right? So you have depression, isolation, you start questioning your sanity. And having a half brother who, was an arsonist, he burnt down 2 of our homes. I had a lot of trauma as a kid. And he was sent away to Pueblo State Hospital. So I was extremely sensitive to mental illness. And I did not want to be labeled crazy or whatever. So I shut down. Until, my mid 40s. And that's when I started, okay, now I can start looking at all this and start finding out what the heck.
I think that's also part of the psychological operation, honestly, like where they go ahead and stigmatize people who've had these experiences by going and putting it out there into the grassroots of the culture, saying that these people are then crazy. You know what I mean? And then you have, the religious aspect, where people are just like, well, it's just, it's clearly Satan, and that's, there's the sun shining through. It was raining and thunderstorming. Welcome to the tropics. And now, okay, there we go. I had this big line on my face. It's I think it's part of it too. I think, that isolation, I try to tell my parents about my poltergeist, they just tell me, get out of here. And you tell anybody like, whatever, you kind of like, you're not allowed to talk about it except amongst the people who have maybe experienced it with you. And that can also be a negative feedback loop because of the trauma involved in it. And instead of like someone like, just taking it in and saying, it's okay. I hear you. And that's what most people need to know is that, okay, even though I may not even believe you, let's say, because it sounds so ridiculous. I haven't had those experiences, but like I was saying earlier, most people have had. And they said, well, if you just take what I had and you just ramp it up, why wouldn't that be possible? So, especially when it comes to children, other guys, if your child or your children are coming to you and they say, Dad, Mom, I hear a voice in my room, take it seriously and go and actually, even if it is, there's a train station nearby and you can hear someone talk or whatever it may be, and you can like kind of wish it away. And if you can wish it away, then show them that too. But at the same time, if you can't, at least listen to them. I think that's super important.
It's so important. And I'm so glad you say that. It's also a delicate line because you don't want to feed them. You don't want to feed their fears or tell them what you think it is. But I'll never forget the first time I got to meet Dr. Leo Sprinkle in person and went to his office. He's like, let's sit down. And for hours we sat and talked. He was the first ear, of somebody that really just listened. And that is more important than anything else. Also journal things, whatever you're experiencing, write the date, write the time, write whatever you think is significant. Are you emotional at the time? A lot of these poltergeist kind of things, I still on a weekly basis have stuff happening all the time around me. I still believe though, I think we're active participants in the phenomena. I think you have to be open to it. I think that I really believe, and there's been a lot of studies done on disassociation and paranormal activity, whether it's ghostly, UFO, whatever. When you disassociate from your physical bodies, whether it's through near-death experience, whether it's through trauma, and that's why oftentimes you talk to experiencers that have abuse or trauma in their youth for whatever reason. Because when we have traumatic events happen, we disassociate out of our bodies for protection. I did that as a little girl often. You leave your bodies, whether it's through meditation or you go through the gateway tapes or any other kind of deep meditation, and you learn to separate. All these types of things can cause you to disassociate. And once you do that, you're tapping into this larger ether. And I feel like once you do that, and especially if you do it from a very young age, you're going to have this connection to the other realms, the other side, whatever you want to call it. And you're right, people label it all sorts of things. But talking it out, writing it out, drawing pictures, just having somebody you can share with will help with your mental health so much, because so many people have experienced things, so many.
Yeah, it's quite a fascinating situation. You brought up something a while ago. I always like to I come from a slightly different angle on a lot of these things. You were talking about MK Ultra and them taking a multitude of different type of illicit substances at one time, and the effects that it may have. Have you ever heard of the psychic? How would you say? I would call them a cosmonaut of hallucinogens. Have you ever heard of Terrence McKenna?
Sounds vaguely familiar. Refresh my memory.
So here's the interesting about Terrence McKenna. He is basically like a philosopher of psychedelics and strange phenomenon that he's experienced while taking them. He passed away in 2000, but he has plenty of tapes out there on the Psychedelic Salon if anybody wants to go and check that out. He's got a very soothing voice. He's also from Colorado. His brother is Dennis McKenna, who's been on Joe Rogan. They went down. Basically, he talks about taking a thing called dimethyltryptamine, which is within our third eye. Okay,
DMT,
so it's
yeah.
DMT, yeah, dimethyltryptamine, yes, and it's within our third eye. And it's endogenous within the body. And he was saying when you take this substance, and then you can also take that and LSD at the same time, or that and cannabis at the same time, or some version of it where he externalized the internal soul, and where he would, one time he did something where they were trying to do that psychic disconnection and throwing his glasses away, saying, I don't need them anymore. His brother going to bathroom for him, looking at water and then truly understanding it, right, and things like that. But the one I was trying to refer to is like when he said that he went into the DMT realm, as he calls it, he would experience these entities called which he deemed self-transforming machine elves. What he would say, see what we're doing? You can do this as well. Welcome. Don't give in to the astonishment. They would talk to him psychic, in his mind, and he would go to another, like shot through a wormhole, and all the reality around him would disassociate. So it's just weird that when there's these connections that I'm trying, because I think psychedelics are very, I'm not saying to take them, guys, by any chance. This is YouTube. And but if you want to you can do Kundalini, meditation for 30 years, or you can just go ahead and push a button and and go there. But it's weird, that connection between what people are experiencing under these extreme mind altering, maybe some type of changing the electrical signals in your brain, and places where you grew up, and that strange connection that could possibly also be there.
Right. Well, Tom, it gets better.
Okay.
So that night that I just explained to you with that disembodied, whether it's plasma ball technology, whatever the heck that was, I just know that me, my mom, and my sister, we drive the 45 minutes back to our home. Okay. And I can remember walking in the front door, falling down, and I was having trouble speaking. They're like, Katie, what did you eat today? And I'm trying to say peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That lasted, I don't know, a minute or two. So they get me upstairs to my bedroom that night, and I have a full-blown tunnel vision, vomiting, migraine headaches, okay? I started suffering these migraine headaches really bad. I'm missing school all the time, blah, blah, blah. Well, this gentleman approaches my mom at work, again in the Denver Tech Center in Colorado, with an ad in the newspaper, and it's talking about the Biofeedback Institute, which just happens to be 2 buildings over in the Denver Tech Center. My mom puts me in the Biofeedback Institute for a year and a half, where I go in and they put little things on my fingers, hook me up to the the headphones, and basically I'm trying to lower and raise my body temperatures to get a handle on my migraine headaches.
Okay.
So I'm doing a podcast on UAP studies with Jason, and for some reason the gateway tapes get brought up. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to check out the gateway tapes on YouTube. And I think it's the third one. And they start relaxing your body. Your arms are heavy and warm. Warmth is flowing into. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the biofeedback program, which was invented by Thomas H. Bedinsky. So I start researching Thomas H. Bedinsky. Now, remember, this is during the ranch years when I'm a little girl. And I find out Thomas H. Bedinsky, who started the Biofeedback Institute in Denver, was a navigational engineer out of Area 51 working on the SR-71 Blackbird navigation systems. He's working with the Menninger Foundation, the Stargate program, the Gateway Project, and the Monroe Institute. All these are connected. And there's a video I found from the late 70s where Thomas H. Bedinsky and the Biofeedback Institute is working with a little boy named Kevin about my same age, because they keep you in a theta state. And they're like, okay, Kevin, can you make the rocket go up? Can you land the rocket? And I'm thinking, why would this navigation engineer switch to biofeedback and basically working in theta states unless they were trying to figure out how to make these craft that probably they captured? They couldn't make them fly. They couldn't make them go because it's all telepathic. Just like in Flight of the Navigator. It's like Flight of the Navigator in real life. So I just made that connection recently, and I'm like, holy crap, there's way more to these programs and projects that were happening than we're even aware of. And especially with the connection, having a half brother in the state hospital. We know MK Ultra and a lot of these projects were working with people in state hospitals.
Oh, yeah.
And then you hear of these kids that are pulled out, whether you're pulled out for the gifted and talented programs.
Oh my God, the GATE program.
Yeah, or
I've heard of this too. This is
you're being pulled out because you have ADHD, hyperactivity, dyslexia, learning disabilities. They were taking people from both ends, gifted and talented, and the ones that were hyperactive and maybe had some trauma. And they pulled these kids out, and they were definitely experimenting and monitoring. And
I heard about that recently within the last year about the GATE program. Where they, and I also imagine people who children who are hyperactive, or what they deem or use that cover blanket of hyperactivity to go ahead and medicate them, is because they don't want them to have the ability to connect to others, to connect that way. They're like, okay, these children are maybe even super special. Maybe they're the ones that we just need to go ahead and medicate and keep to the side because they're so powerful. And then you have the ones who are somewhat gifted, but we can go ahead and we found something within their biology or something within their personalities that we can go ahead and manipulate to our goals. You know what I mean? I think there's something to it. So the mere fact that they, what is it going to take, Katie, for this to be seen as common play? Is it going to be just chipping away at the stone, or is there going to be like a big bombshell moment?
No, I'm hopeful because of podcasts like yours, The Eye of Jupiter and Tom, and there's thousands and thousands of us talking now, millions of us talking now from across the globe. That's what gives me hope. This, where this used to be taboo even 10 years ago. I used to be embarrassed to tell people what I was investigating, and now it's like, okay, here's what I'm doing, and people are 8 times out of 10 will have their own encounter or own story to tell. So I am hopeful that we'll get to the bottom, but I think the real secret, people like to talk about disclosure and, are aliens here, or UFOs visiting our planet? No, I think the real secret is keeping the power of our mind shut down. Keep us in fear, keep us divided, keep us not knowing our own potentials to manifest, to create reality, to interact with reality. And that goes for ghosts, it goes for UFOs, it goes for cryptids. It's all of it. And that's the conclusion I've come to. You hear it and you see it time and time and time again. The people that are in these locations doing the investigating and research, their state of minds and their own perspective or their own intention plays a role in it, for sure.
Yeah. Intention is everything. And I think in the meantime, until this is, soft disclosure and, slowly leaking of this information is slowly going to data information. We have to that is going to happen one way or another through time. But I think in the meantime, we have to make sure we keep these, yourself and many others, these, like who've had these super traumatic experience, help them stay grounded and centered. Belief in God, belief in family, belief in love. Those things should always maintain their power within your life. And whenever you feel that slipping away, then reach out to somebody who can help you. And I've had people reach out to me. Hey, Tom, hey, okay, dude, let's talk. And I do that with everybody. And because until this is seen as the same as geology or the same as, Egyptology, which is a bunch of, sorry, that was the first time I went science is a little bit, okay. It's a little bit underground there. Okay.
We were taught.
Yeah, wait a minute. Excuse me. What did they find under there? Don't worry about it. Don't worry. It is a football field. We played football back then. And still people who believe they're cryptic, like tombs and stuff like that. Like, really, man? You make a tomb? There's nobody in the world that important. And yeah, there's all these narratives. And then the people who are then below the narratives that are thrown on top of them, we need to help them realize that there's other people out there like yourself and many others who've experienced this. I want to make sure that I nail this point today. Okay, you can comment on that, but I want to get into your books. I want to go into those books, and you said you started in your mid 40s, and then I guess it seems like you've been very prolific because you look very young to me. So I'm not trying to butter your bread or anything here. I'm just trying to be honest with you.
Filters. No.
The first time I went on TikTok, I put a filter on my face. I was like, I don't look like this, and I said it live on camera. Tell me about your books. What's that all about?
Yeah. So the first book is called Letters of Love and Light: 4 Decades of UFO Encounters and Experiences Shared with R. Leo Sprinkle. That came about very selfishly. I went to the archives to dig on the Rocky Mountain Ranch, or the Clearview Ranch, of my childhood, and Dr. Leo Sprinkle had over 40 years of his archives there, over 74 boxes, I think, at the time. And I found myself, well, number one, since I raised these kids, I would go to the archives and get quiet time. I'm like, oh, this is my escape. But I got lost in people's letters from around the world. People in the field, people from all over. And I just started taking pictures of hundreds and hundreds of letters. And I spent 3 years pulling out like the juicy parts of the letter, and I culminated them in this book, was able to share it with Dr. Leo before he left the planet. And he was so proud of it. But basically they're organized into different chapters. Like a lot of people wrote about, was this a dream or a memory? Lucid dreaming. People would have these vivid memories of what they thought was a dream, but they involved ET or craft or something. One of them was on channeling, people who claim to channel. ET crafts descriptions. There was a 1800 pre-Travis Walton encounter in Snowflake, Arizona that's in there. Francis E. Warren, letters from professionals in the field. So it runs a gamut, letters from children. And then what was really cool about it, Dr. Leo Sprinkle kept all of his return letters. He was old school. He'd type it so he'd have the copy. And so I got to see his train of thought through 40 years and did a great interview with Leo. So that's the first book. That was just and he signed all the title came to me in a lucid dream, actually, because he signed all his letters, Love and Light Leo. Love and Light Leo. So Letters of Love and Light. And letter writing is a lost art. Some people would write him 15, 20-page letters. Yeah, and people don't write letters at school anymore. So that was pretty cool. Now, this next book here, I co-authored this along with Tony Angiola, and this is Snippy the Horse. It's the first world-recognized animal mutilation death. And Kerry King, who is the great nephew of Nellie King, who owned Snippy the Horse in the San Luis Valley of Colorado, which is a huge hot spot right at the base of Mount Blanca. Mount Blanca is a very spiritual mountain. Even warring tribes don't battle there because it's so sacred. But you're talking about hum sounds, box encounters, first world-known recognized death in 1967. There was like this green ooze and a tool and a lot of physical evidence in this case. So long story short, this book came about because the long lost APRO files that went missing for over 35 years were recently rediscovered and acquired at the National UFO Historical Records Center with David Marler. And we have all the original photographs now, recordings and documents that right a lot of wrongs throughout history. In the late 80s, they changed the horse name to Lady, which is actually Snippy's mother. And there's all sorts of great new photographs in this book that have never been seen before. These are some of my favorites. This is Snippy and Sheba, the two horses that were in the pasture with Snippy when he was mutilated, and they were really skittish after his tragic death out there. So this is the new book here. Again, you can find it on Amazon, Tony Angiola and Katie Paige. And then we're also doing a new fun little series called UFO Alien or Flying Saucers, Aliens. And the first book is called Flying Saucers, Aliens and Gremlins, which talks about like the Foo Fighters of World War II.
Oh, wow.
And things like that. So that's going to be a whole series. So if you just do a Google search, you can find the books. I
want to go ahead and yeah, that's great. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find natural pauses. We've only met each other for an hour. I'm still working on it. Yeah, James. So thanks for being here, James. Okay, let's go ahead and cast a net for the people who are still non-believers. Where would you point your finger to, where people can, there's something to sink their teeth into, like the average Joe, 9 to 5 plumber, or, secretary, someone who works at a doctor's office who just maybe has a little spark of something. Maybe they've had some type of encounter, but they're just like, I don't know if this is real or not. And they're sitting on the fence, but they also want to look at it through the skeptical eye, which I think is very important. Where would you direct them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And believe it or not, I'm more skeptical than a lot of people think. Like, I'm always pointing like how much of this is, black access, military secrets and projects. Hi from Ireland. Hi, Ireland.
Hi from Ireland. It is a new TET. You're new to the show. Welcome to the show. Yeah,
a lot of Celtic stuff, a lot of good folklore. But what I would say to the skeptic out there, and I tend to lean that way, so I totally get it, is number one, just be open to what you said, to listen and to hear people out. You don't have to agree with people. That's a lesson we're learning hardcore right now, right? Just let.
Oh my God!
Yeah, let's hear people out.
Perfectly said.
Yeah. Number
Good
two.
Job.
Yeah.
Number
two is, I know it's controversial, but I like Thomas Campbell's work. We're looking at the nature of reality of itself. So maybe kind of start digging into that whole theory. Like, if we have an important role to play of creating the phenomenon, who's to say that, what happens to this person or that person, they didn't manifest and create in their own reality. So that's kind of another theory. But one thing that always brought me back to there's no ETs, there's no aliens, there's nothing going on, we don't have great evidence, was the pilot reports. And Richard Haynes did a lot of great books on, nuclear bases, military bases where their nukes get shut down. A lot of military men and women, civilian aircraft. There are boxes and boxes and boxes of very credible people that report these things. So I would say start there. Start with maybe what you believe, like, oh, I believe police officer, or I believe pilots, and start digging into that. Look into Richard Haynes's work. His collection is at the American Heritage Center, and there's box after box of very well documented reports and transcriptions on these on this phenomenon. So that's a good place to start too. And really just start reading, start looking at reports. And that's my big message, is it's not too late to look back at history and historical cases. There's so much more to learn and so many more dots we can connect. Cases that we like with the Snippy case, there was so much more to that case that I connected to the Rocky Mountain Ranch that I wouldn't have known had I not gone to the archives. And we spent more than 6 months reopening that case. And I'm so glad we did, because there was so much more to it than I ever even knew. And I'm deep in this stuff, so,
Yeah, that's the thing. It's you have to find whatever it is that, say, for example, you have a family member, like, an uncle who's just, on it, he's just one of those dudes or aunts, whatever. I'm just picking a name here. Give us some love over on Facebook, guys. And somebody that you have confidence in, that you've heard kind of mention something, you know what I mean? It could be about the time they were in Vietnam and seen a large gorilla known as the rock ape. Mm-hmm. And you're like, what are you talking about? And then have them sit down and actually listen to them, because not only are you helping them by listening, but at the same time, you are learning yourself. Right. I enjoy everybody who comes on here, but I do have a special place in my heart for, like policemen or former policemen because they can't talk about it, or government officials,
Right.
Whether it be a mayor of a small town or anything like that, who said, I was up for re-election. I can't talk about, seeing Bigfoot on my granddad's property. Shout out to Daryl Denton. And so you can't just like throw everything out with the bathwater. You can't throw the baby out with it, for sure.
That's true. And it's just putting a crack in that door, because they're like the boxes we talked about earlier. I didn't want to touch that because I didn't want to be judged. Cryptids was another one.
Not to mention what it would do your hair. You touch it, we can't do that.
Yeah, right. I mean, cryptids, I'm like, okay, I know there's large birds like phoenixes and these like pterodactyl things reported, and Sasquatch, and, these platypus creatures and things like that. But people like, I don't want to believe in fairies or Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot because it just seems kind of out there. So I didn't even look at it for years and years and years. And then,
the unknown is scary. The unknown is scary.
But once you start looking at it and learning about it and talking to experiencers, you can't deny it. It's like people are experiencing something's happening. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if they're living underground, if it can phase in and phase out or what, but something's happening and we just can't close our eyes to it.
It's interesting too, because like the people who are staunchly against that, they'll say there's a rational explanation for everything. It's like their mind is shut. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So people whose mind, and if you try to talk about anything like meditation or anything of that nature, or we're talking about opening your mind, they're staunchly against that. And that was like what I was talking about. I think it's a bit of a psyop, a psychological operation, guys, to make you go, no, because when you shut that out, you only live within your five senses, is what they also want, guys. They want you to only live within those five senses. True. And if your mind is then open to certain things, then certain things will happen to you. And yes, it's scary. But let me tell you, the concept of death is scary. And we all know we're going to experience that. So if you know that, and that's scary, now imagine knowing that, but also having, E.T. knocking on your door and trying to give you French toast. It's
they like their pancakes.
I'm warming up. Oh, you like pancakes? Okay, fair enough.
The ET's like pancakes. There's some good ET stories.
I will phone home and make sure that he brings pancakes next time. I'm warming up my mind for tonight. So, Katie, I'm definitely going to have you back on if you'd be so willing to do so.
Yeah, I would be happy to come back on. A lot more to cover, because any one of these topics we can do a deeper dive on. But I certainly
we just kind of wanted to give people like a. Yeah, I just want to give kind of people an overview. Maybe people out there, because I'm just like they are. I don't know, but I'm open, and I'm also, also understanding that, like we were talking about, that we delved into the mental aspects of it. I'm definitely open to that. So that was really cool. I really appreciate the fact that you even came on my show. I've never had one on my show. Have you met William Shatner?
We didn't get to meet him. No, flew out to LA.
He was just moderating.
He wasn't there, so I didn't get to meet William Shatner. But it was an honor to be on that show. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. It's an interesting thing, and I definitely, when you meet somebody that you realize there's so much more that they can be talking about, and that you're just scratching the surface. And I think eventually I'll be able to. You're so versed in what you're talking about because of your experiences and what you do. But I'm sure, there's going to be a point where I throw a curveball in there that maybe we haven't talked about before, because because that's how we get to any type of thing. You meeting other people might open other doors of perception, which is a great book, by the way, too, guys, if you ever want to read one. And sometimes a question will be asked that you just haven't thought of before. So I'm going to touch real quick on what happened 2 days ago. Just real quick. Let's not be that. Okay. Remember what we are. Okay. And remember our processes, our democratic processes. That was awful. Our deep condolences go out to Charlie and his family.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
And there's so many things I could say about that, but just know that the enemy doesn't want to talk. And if you shut down any type of way of talking, that means that your mind is made up. And if your mind is made up, what did Einstein say, Katie? Those who say I know give up thinking.
That's
give up
true.
Thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't shut people's voices down. That's
not forever. And so try to spread love as much as you can. Sweep the doorstep in front of your house before you point out others, and then maybe you'll realize there's a different world in which you think we live in.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So thank you, Katie.
Thank you for having me.
One more time, where can we find you?
You can find me at katiepaige, which is katiepaige.net, at rockymountainranchresearch.org. And please check out Rocky Mountain Ranch Research YouTube, and hit that subscribe button. Try and help me get back to where I was before I delete. It's sad I was deleting the other one, but gosh darn it, couldn't believe that happened. But again, be kind to everybody out there. That's key, and keep that is, I know it's a rough time right now for a lot of people, but try to stay in that mental mindset of love and light. So
stay in your heart. Yes, absolutely. So remember, guys, we are the eye. We are aware. Love you all, and have a wonderful weekend. You have been watching the Eye of Jupiter podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so you don't miss any of your favorite interviews. And remember, we are the Eye, and we are aware.